Hey everyone, my name is Friendzoned. Today we won't look at any music, but we'll look at some sound design and how I created the sounds behind this GIF. Alright, so as you could see, that was pretty creepy. I did not make the GIF itself, and I could not find the original maker of this GIF. So if he or she recognizes him or herself, please let me know in the comments, and I'll gladly link to any social you want me to link to. If you don't know where the character is coming from, this is Natsuki from the game Doki Doki Literature Club. And if you're into horror psychological games that sort of twist your mind, go ahead and play it. It's free to play on Steam or on the official website. The links will be in the description. It's an awesome game. You play it, you won't regret it. In any case, let me explain what I did to create the sounds behind this GIF. So I first started by creating those sort of markers in Ableton to give me sort of guidelines where I should stop and start the sounds, because at some point Natsuki is sort of normal and at some others she's completely freaking out, and this is what I wanted to recreate with the sound. So I started by giving me those guidelines. Then you can see here on the right all the different layers and all the different sounds that I made for this patch. Let us take them one by one and I'll explain sort of what they stand for, etc. So first of all, we have this main crush here. I feel like what makes a music or a sound creepy is oftentimes linked with bit reduction. Bit reduction is the reduction of the bits in which a sound is encoded in a computer or so. And in Ableton, this audio effect is called redux, and you can fuck around with the sampling rate of the sounds and the reduction. Like, you can reduce manually the bits of the sound, and it will sort of like have less bits to encode the sound itself, and that will force the computer to corrupt the audio signal. So it sounds like this. At first started with a pad from Ableton's library that sounds like this. I automated the auto filter here so that it swooshes around, but if I apply the bit reduction with downsampling on, it sounds like this. So you can already hear how creepy this all becomes. I then froze this and flattened it into audio, and I applied a bit more saturation, as well as an EQ8 to sort of bring up the creepiness of it. Next, I still wanted to have some melodic elements to this track. So I decided to play with bells. It's also like an Ableton preset called Brush Bell Hits Bells, and it sounds like this. There is a specific reason why I chose this specific interval. This interval is called a tritone, and it's made up of 3 tones between the 2 notes, 3 whole tones, and historically this interval sounded so dissonant that it has been completely banned for many years and in many different types of music. So for example, in classical music or so, you probably won't hear the tritone unless it has the signification of evil or of the devil. That is the reason why I chose those 2 intervals, because they're both tritones and they both historically represented evil and things that sound wrong. There is something a bit more interesting though, and it happens with this simple delay here. In Ableton, if you set the simple delay to repitch mode, and if you mess around with the time here on the automation, then the delay will actually, like the audio that is being delayed, if it sort of stretches out, it will decrease in pitch too. And if the delay becomes shorter over time, then the pitch will rise up. And you can hear this at the end of the sound, especially. If I crank this 100%, you'll hear it more clearly. It goes like, sort of like a pitch bend. And I wanted to have this to sort of like let the listener know that some shit is going to happen that is completely wrong. There is something more spicy though down there in those screams here. I worked with the actual sample of a person screaming, and it sounds pretty terrible. It sounds like this. I warned you. I wanted to work with screams for obvious reasons because, you know, it's scary and stuff. I did smash a vocoder on it with those settings, and it sounds like this and completely corrupts it. Added some overdrive and the classic bit reduction to have an even more corrupted signal. And then cleaned it up a bit with an EQ8. I then smashed this audio into this patch down here. There is one interesting thing going on down there though, and the same thing is applied to the bass down here. This happens here in this LFO. This LFO is set in binary mode, so it's either an on or off sort of switch if you wish, and it modulates the utility on or off setting here. So that means that every time the LFO is on, the utility will be on. Every time it's off, the utility will be off. And the utility decreases the volume of 24 decibels. And what this makes is that I automated the rate of the LFO to increase over time. So that at first, the on and offs are happening a bit less often than at the end, where it goes very, very quickly. And this sort of adds even more unpredictability to the sound, if you wish. And it sounds like this. If I turn it off, it sounds like this. So I thought this was interesting, how it turned already creepy sound into something even creepier and less predictable. And then I decided to work with a crying woman. What I mean by crying woman, of course, is that I'm working with a sample of a crying woman. But the sample itself sounds like this. So, I mean, I thought it was a really good sample. I thought like it really made me feel uncomfortable. So props to the voice actress on this one, because like I remember when I downloaded it and I started like listening through it to find interesting bits, I really started feeling uncomfortable myself. So props to her, awesome work. I messed around with this audio with the classic bit reduction, but I automated the bit reduction to increase over time so that the voice gets more and more corrupted over time. At the end, it just like gets completely destroyed. So that was for the screams, and then I did layer a bass coming from the same scream as before. There's some saturation, bit reduction, auto panning to chop it up, saturation, bit reduction again, EQ8, utility to increase the volume over time, and the same LFO trick that I presented earlier. And with and without the LFO trick, you will see the result sounds completely different. Here's with. And here's without. So you can hear that when it's not on, when this LFO trick is not done, then the whole thing sounds much more consistent and coherent. And that's not something you want with a creepy sound like this. Last but not least, I added some white noise that I completely messed around. So this is the white noise. I completely pushed the higher end of the spectrum like crazy, added some erosion, overdrive, saturation, utility, and an EQ8 to only keep the crispy end of the white noise. I automated also the volume over time so that it smooshes a bit more nicely and it sounds like this. So there you go, those are all the layers that I used to create the sound behind the GIF I showed you earlier. It was a really fun exercise because I usually work with music and not so much with sounds for the sake of the sounds themselves. I hope that you liked it and that you found some useful tricks in this video. Perhaps you can even apply them to your music next time, who knows. In any case, my name is Friendzoned, and I'll see you next time.